Pierrepoint, Albert Pierrepoint. Yeah. Christie and Evans were hanged by the same executioner, Alfred Pierrepoint. Evans was hanged first, and then 3 years later, Christie was found guilty of his murders, and he was hanged by the same hangman.
If you heard about a man responsible for over 10 deaths in a single day, and more than 400 over his lifetime, you might assume he was a serial killer. But Albert Pierrepoint wasn't a criminal. He was Britain's most prolific executioner. For more than 2 decades, he carried out hangings on behalf of the state, executing murderers, war criminals, and some of the most infamous names in British history. This is the story of Albert Pierrepoint. Albert Pierrepoint was born on the 30th of March 1905 in Clayton near Bradford in Yorkshire. Both his father, Henry Pierrepoint, and his uncle, Thomas Pierrepoint, worked as official executioners throughout Albert's childhood. The family business wasn't often spoken about openly, but young Albert was drawn to this unusual and taboo profession.
When I leave school, I should like to be public executioner like my dad is, because it needs a steady man with good hands like my dad and my Uncle Tom, and I shall be the same.
As an adult, Albert Pierrepoint lived a simple life, working as a grocer and then as a delivery driver. But the idea of becoming an executioner never left him. In April 1931, at the age of 26, he applied to the prison commissioners to be an assistant executioner. He began travelling to prisons across the country, assisting the lead executioner. Pierrepoint would accompany the prisoner onto the scaffold, secure their legs and step back before the trapdoor was triggered. Every prisoner was measured in advance so he could calculate the length of the drop necessary. Too short or too long, and the execution could go badly wrong. Pierrepoint learned the trade quickly. Over time, he became known for his efficiency and respect for the task.
I was taken to the corridor outside the condemned cell, and I looked through the Judas hole. For the first time, I was looking at a man who was to die at my hands, studying him technically, but only to calculate how to be most merciful to him. I was interested in his physique, which affected my calculation of the drop I should give, and in his temperament and behaviour, which could give me an indication of how I could expect him to act.
By 1941, he'd been promoted to lead executioner for England and Wales. From that point on, Pierrepoint became the man the British state relied on, carrying out executions across the country. The process remained the same each time.
I enter the first cell with my assistant, and I strap the prisoner's arms there and then. And I leave him there for a second while I slip into the second cell and strap the second one. Then I go into the first cell and take the first prisoner onto the scaffold, and as soon as he is walking to the scaffold, I give the signal to bring the second man out.
During the Second World War, Pierrepoint was involved in a number of wartime executions. He hanged 15 German spies operating in Britain, as well as American servicemen who'd been convicted of capital crimes by military courts. After the war, he was sent to Hamelin in Germany to carry out executions of Nazi war criminals. Among them were figures linked to Bergen-Belsen, including Irma Grese and Josef Kramer. Between late 1948 and 1949 alone, he executed over 200 people in Germany, often carrying out multiple hangings in a single day. Back in Britain, Pierrepoint carried out some of the most famous executions in the country's history. In 1949, he hanged John George Haigh, later known as the Acid Bath Murderer. In March 1950, he executed Timothy Evans, a 25-year-old described as having the mental age of a child. He'd been convicted of murdering his wife and daughter at their home in London and sentenced to death. 3 years later, Evans's landlord, John Christie, was arrested for a series of murders, including Evans's wife. Pierrepoint also executed Christie in 1953 in Pentonville Prison. The case raised serious questions about Evans's conviction and is now widely considered a miscarriage of justice. In 1953, he executed Derek Bentley. Bentley was 19 years old and had been involved in a burglary alongside another teenager, Christopher Craig. When police arrived, Craig shot and killed a police officer. Craig was too young to be executed, but Bentley was not. Bentley was convicted and sentenced to death. He was executed at Wandsworth Prison. Years later, his conviction was overturned. In 1955, Pierrepoint executed Ruth Ellis. She had shot her partner, David Blakely, outside a public house in London. Ellis became the last woman to be hanged in Britain. Her case also led to the significant public debate about capital punishment. 2 weeks later, Pierrepoint carried out his final execution. In 1956, Pierrepoint resigned from his role as executioner, following disputes over payment and expenses after an execution, though some believe it was linked to the contentious execution of Ruth Ellis. After more than 2 decades in the role, his career came to an end. By the 1960s, public opinion in Britain was changing. In 1965, the death penalty for murder was suspended and was later abolished entirely. The system Pierrepoint had served disappeared. Albert Pierrepoint died on the 10th of July 1992, aged 87. For much of his life, Pierrepoint described his role as carrying out the law. He was not responsible for sentencing, only for enforcing the punishment handed out by a judge. However, in later years, his views appeared to change. He began to question whether the death penalty acted as a deterrent. Based on his experience, he suggested it did not.
It is said to be a deterrent. I cannot agree. There have been murders since the beginning of time, and we shall go on looking for deterrents until the end of time. If death were a deterrent, I might be expected to know. It is I who have faced them last. Young lads and girls, working men, grandmothers, all the men and women whom I have faced at that final moment convince me in that what I have done, I have not prevented a single murder.
Thank you for watching this video on the British executioner, Albert Pierrepoint. For more content like this, make sure to subscribe and like this video. Let us know down below if there are any other stories you'd like us to cover. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.